This case occurred in the United States of America due to the actions of Sabrina Zunich. Sabrina was born on October 27, 1994, in Cleveland, Ohio, USA, to parents Suzanne Edwards and Mark Zunich. Sabrina's parents led an antisocial lifestyle, so from the age of 3, she was raised by her paternal grandmother. At the age of 4, Sabrina was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, caused by a neurological disorder. As she grew older, it became increasingly difficult for Sabrina to control herself. Her impulsive behavior regularly led to conflicts and fights with those around her, including classmates. Due to Sabrina's consistent aggressive behavior, she was separated from her grandmother at the age of 14 and placed in a shelter under the supervision of Lake County Child Services. Sabrina spent the next 2 years in the shelter, and in 2011, at the age of 16, she was adopted by the Knofel family and moved into their home in the suburb of Clinton. Sabrina's adoptive mother was named Lisa Knofel. Lisa was a kind-hearted woman who genuinely loved children and sought to help those around her. She was born on May 2, 1971, to Clark and Rita in the town of Knowlesburg. In 2000, Lisa moved to Lake County, where she eventually started a family with a man named Kevin Knofel and became the mother of 2 daughters, Megan and Haley. Lisa worked for the Social Services Department dealing with minors and their families in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. One day, she realized her dreams and opened her own foster home, and it was then that she adopted Sabrina. Sabrina's time in the new family had a positive impact on her. As a high school student, she suddenly became interested in her studies, earning good grades and making plans for the future. Sabrina even expressed her dream of becoming a model and studying cosmetology to her adoptive parents. Lisa and Kevin were very pleased with the progress of the former troubled teenager and noticed Sabrina's excellent relationship not only with them but also with their biological daughters. Sabrina had a particularly close bond with Lisa. Family members and friends noted that the 2 young women looked more like sisters. Sabrina often stated her admiration for Lisa, saw her as a role model, and truly considered her an older sister. Unfortunately, the idyllic family dynamic didn't last long. Problems arose just 6 months after Sabrina joined the new family. Suddenly, she began accusing Lisa of not loving her and favoring her biological daughters. Meanwhile, as the relationship between the adoptive mother and daughter deteriorated, the bond between Sabrina and Kevin only grew stronger. The stepfather and stepdaughter became closer each day, until the point when friends and family noticed their suspicious behavior. The conversations and jokes exchanged between Sabrina and Kevin sounded more like those of lovers. On October 27, 2012, Sabrina turned 18 years old. According to the law, she was supposed to begin living independently and leave the foster family. For a while, Sabrina asked her foster parents to allow her to stay so she could finish high school without disruption. On November 16th of the same year, around 1 a.m., Sabrina picked up a knife, sneaked into Lisa's bedroom, and approached her bed. For 15 minutes, she silently watched Lisa sleep before starting to stab her repeatedly with a 10-inch kitchen knife with serrated edges. Lisa woke up after the initial strikes, screaming in pain, but her cries soon subsided. Megan, Lisa's biological daughter, who was 13 years old at the time, heard her mother's voice and rushed to her bedroom, where she saw Sabrina holding a knife. In a frightened state, Megan immediately called emergency services, and amidst screams and sobs, she reported that her sister was trying to kill her mother. The police soon arrived at the house, but it was already too late. Upon arrival, law enforcement officers found Sabrina. She had several superficial cuts on her body, and she still held a knife in one of her hands, the same knife she had used to kill Lisa. Lisa's lifeless body lay in a pool of blood. Sabrina seemed to be in a state of shock, but she complied with all of the police officers' requests. Officer Randy Mullinax asked her to drop the knife and place her hands behind her head, which she did. Although Sabrina didn't resist arrest, she remained unresponsive to the questions asked of her at the police station. Meanwhile, the police completed a search of the house and discovered Lisa's younger daughter locked in a closet. On that night, Kevin, the girl's father, was not at home as he was on a business trip. He was a long-haul truck driver and learned about his wife's death from a call by the police. A few minutes after that call, Kevin dialed 911 to inquire about his daughter's well-being. He was informed that he could come to the police station to pick them up. Kevin arrived at the station the following day. During his visit, the police officers noted how composed he was. They expected a man devastated by his wife's fate, but Kevin appeared remarkably calm. He simply collected his daughters and left without asking many questions. This demeanor raised suspicions among the police and later among the couple's family and friends, as everyone believed Kevin couldn't remain so composed after what had happened. Shortly thereafter, Kevin went to the prison, attempting to get permission to talk to Sabrina, who was in custody. This marked the end of his calm demeanor. The foster father became upset when he was denied access to see his adopted daughter and have a conversation with her. Eventually, he left the police station in a frustrated mood. The news of the gruesome crime stirred up the local media. The Lake County Police determined that the victim had sustained a total of 178 stab wounds, including to the head, neck, torso, and limbs. Despite having a clear suspect from the outset, the investigators were still grappling with determining the possible motive for the crime. In the ensuing 10 months after the incident, detectives spent their time trying to piece together the available details. The police also paid significant attention to the nature of the relationship between Sabrina and Kevin, which they found suspicious. During initial interviews with potential witnesses, it was revealed that Sabrina had confessed to an acquaintance from social services that she had allowed Kevin to take nude photos of her in exchange for money. Moreover, a week before the crime, Kevin himself contacted the same social services worker, stating that he and his wife were considering divorce while still wanting to maintain custody of their adopted daughter. Finally, one of Sabrina's friends disclosed during questioning that in early October 2012, Kevin had asked her to find a hitman. This information led the police to suspect that Kevin was also involved in the murder and had participated in its planning. The investigators also discovered that Kevin had taken out 2 insurance policies, insuring his wife's life for a total of $800,000 just a few hours after her death was pronounced. In the days following her murder, Kevin engaged in a significant amount of spending. Initially, Sabrina denied Kevin's involvement in the murder. However, after spending 9 months in custody, Sabrina felt that her adoptive father wanted nothing to do with her and agreed to help the investigators by revealing what had led to the horrific killing. Sabrina accused Kevin of premeditating Lisa's murder and provided specific details about their affair. She claimed that their romantic relationship began in March 2012 when Kevin returned home exhausted after a long haul on his truck. He complained of sore legs, and Sabrina offered to massage his feet. From that day on, their mutual attraction grew. And by September of that same year, they became regular sexual partners. Sabrina also stated that Lisa never suspected their affair as they were cautious in their behavior. Kevin would often send Sabrina a multitude of text messages expressing that he no longer loved Lisa and wanted to start a new life with her. He unveiled his plan to Sabrina and promised her a future of financial security, funded by the insurance money. Kevin assured Sabrina he would buy her a house, a car, and even suggested she could replace the girl's mother. According to Sabrina, she didn't want to take her adoptive mother's life and suggested to Kevin that they should just file for divorce. Kevin retorted that if he did that, Lisa would take his daughters away from him. He also made repeated jests, remarking that a dead Lisa was worth more than a living one. Thus, Kevin's idea to eliminate his wife began to take shape, and the lovers decided that Sabrina would stab her to death, steal some valuables, making it look like a failed robbery that ended tragically, the homeowner murdered. Kevin procured the necessary knife for the killing and taught Sabrina how to deliver strikes to inflict maximum damage on the victim. He also warned Sabrina that if she were to get arrested, she should feign mental instability. Sabrina further revealed to the investigators what triggered her to commit the murder. On the morning of November 15th, the day before the incident, Kevin suddenly stopped the car as he was driving her to school and burst into tears. He confessed to Sabrina that he and Lisa had a terrible fight the previous night and that he would end his life if his wife remained alive. Fearing that the man she loved would take his own life, Sabrina reluctantly accepted that she had to end Lisa's life. The investigators discussed the testimony provided by Sabrina, leading to the decision to arrest Kevin. On August 9, 2013, the 43-year-old widower was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder under aggravated circumstances and participation in the crime. Sabrina agreed to testify against him in exchange for the possibility of parole after 30 years. In May 2014, the trial began, during which prosecutor Patrick Hondin stated that there was no doubt about who actually committed the murder. Nevertheless, Kevin was well aware of what was supposed to happen on the morning of November 16th. Since he had helped plan this murder with Sabrina, he was unquestionably involved in the crime. When Sabrina took the stand, she admitted to her romantic relationship with Kevin and detailed how they had planned the crime. She assured the judges that the idea was Kevin's and she had merely acted upon it because she loved him and didn't want him to suffer. The defendant told the jury that she hoped for justice to prevail since she wasn't the only one involved in this crime. To discuss the defendant's behavior after the murder, the prosecution called several officials who had participated in the investigation. Among them was a police officer who had first encountered Kevin on the day after the murder. According to the officer, the widower appeared remarkably composed. The court also heard from several colleagues of the victim. One of them, a woman named Erica Gator, recounted how she had visited Kevin's home on the day after the murder to bring him and his daughters some food. She noticed how mundane he seemed. She also mentioned that Kevin had shown no emotions whatsoever at his wife's funeral. The prosecution also brought a few individuals to the stand who were connected to insurance companies in some way. These individuals unanimously stated that on the morning Lisa was killed, Kevin had called them to inquire about the documents needed to claim the insurance policy he had taken out shortly before his wife's death. Additionally, during the trial, testimony was given by a Lake County forensic expert who had conducted an autopsy on Lisa's body. He described the numerous horrific injuries inflicted upon her, two of which, in his opinion, were fatal. He mentioned the wound to the jaw, where the knife had penetrated so deeply that it pierced the carotid artery, and the chest wound. The doctor explained that the number of wounds was extensive, and some indicated the victim's attempts to resist. This suggested that Lisa fought for her life for several minutes. The investigators were unable to provide copies of the text messages exchanged between Sabrina and Kevin. Nevertheless, they presented data regarding the quantity of messages and phone calls between the pair. According to the cell phone operator's data, the defendants exchanged 1491 messages and made 78 calls to each other between November 1st and November 16th, 2012. Kevin's attorney, Michael Connick, who represented Kevin's interests in court, argued that the only person responsible for the murder should be considered Sabrina. He claimed that the investigators had no physical evidence that Sabrina and Kevin were indeed lovers. Moreover, there were no specific text messages between the defendants that could suggest Kevin was planning his wife's murder. According to Connick, the prosecution's only basis for their case was Sabrina's testimony, which she used to secure a reduced sentence. The attorney argued that Kevin should be released since the charges against him were unfounded. He also contended that Sabrina killed her adoptive mother not at Kevin's request, but because 2 weeks prior, Lisa had demanded that she leave their home by January 1, 2013. As for Kevin, he declined to testify in court. After a 9.5-hour hearing on June 11th, the jury found him guilty on all 11 counts. Subsequently, on August 6, 2014, Judge Joseph Gibson sentenced him to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Kevin will be eligible for parole for the first time in 2044 when he turns 73. The defense warned that they would appeal the verdict, focusing on presenting expert testimony about Sabrina's mental health issues. According to the defense lawyers, it was her psychological problems that drove her to commit the murder on her own. Following the trial, in which Sabrina testified to her involvement in her adoptive mother's murder, she was charged with premeditated murder under aggravated circumstances. Her attorney, Charles Graves, stated that his client pleaded guilty and admitted her guilt at the hearing in August 2014. On September 29th of the same year, 19-year-old Sabrina Zunich was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Thus, she will be eligible for parole in 2042 when she turns 47. Upon hearing the verdict, Sabrina burst into tears. The judge explained to her that the only reason she was given the chance for parole was that she assisted the investigators. While the judge agreed that Kevin had manipulated the defendant and used her to achieve his goals, her actual crime exceeded his initial plan. The judge also ordered a compensation of $6 million to be paid to Lisa's 2 daughters. Sabrina, who is currently 28 years old, is serving her sentence at the Dayton Correctional Institution, a women's prison in Ohio founded in 1987.